Welcome to the Refined Strength podcast. I have my lovely guest, Brittney Justice Holloman.
Oh shit! She did the competitive
Yeah,
edge.
I did it. I went there. Brittney Justice. So I was actually listening to the Competitive Edge, which you are a host of. You are the co-host along with our coach, Mark Tomanek. And so I've been wanting to have you on for a while because you're just a dope person, but also I got the chance to like actually meet you and get to know you a little bit at the meetup a few weeks ago. And that just solidified me wanting you on the podcast because I see you as someone who is like just has so much to give to others. Like you give a lot to your athletes, and I can see that from like an outsider's perspective. And also just like knowing some of your athletes very well. But yeah, that's what this podcast is all about, is just like adding value to people who need it. So I want to know who you are and go from there. Like whatever that question means to you, who are you?
Oh man, it's been a long time since someone has asked me who I am. Where they're like, introduce yourself, and so it's interesting now because I think the last time someone asked me that, it was
You were a different person.
was a different person. So here we go. Um, my name is Brittney Justice Holloman. I'm a coach and Tomanek Trained. I'm a bodybuilder. I'm transitioning into the wellness division, but I've done various divisions in the MPC. I love bodybuilding. It's my lifestyle. It's something that my family my family did. So my mom was a figure competitor when I was young. So I just kind of like, I couldn't really not do it because I was already exposed to it as a child. And in that, like, I wanted to help other people bodybuild successfully and do it in a way, not just like where they just did it and they did a show, but they felt like their lifestyle aligned with it and felt like it was something enjoyable for them to do. Because I remember my mom doing it a completely different way, and her whole experience was different than my experience. Yeah, and so she's like, I'm at her house right now, and it took her a long time to even understand me being on plan in an off season, or being an example for other competitors, and how she'd be like, I don't like why, because she didn't entirely enjoy the process because of the way they used to do it. So like she liked it, like it was something she did, but her whole definition of it was different than mine. And I think that in me doing it the way that I do, she started to change her views on competing too. And so I love helping people with that, like just changing their mindset surrounding their own alignment.
That's really cool. I think like, yeah, the people that kind of did or do bodybuilding in like that way, like just like a totally different way where they love it, but they love it because they get to like have this thing that they hate. Like, hating a part of off season, hating being fat in the off season, or hating being on low food. And it's like, that's in your mind. Like you're choosing to hate that, and you're choosing to do the things in a certain way that make you not like it. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, it's not like she wouldn't have done it if she didn't like it, right? But it's like it's a whole different thing when you're in alignment with what you're doing. It's a whole different thing when you like what the body you're building. You like the division you're in. You like the food you're eating. You like what's the changes in your body, the changes in your mindset. You like what's happening instead of picking and choosing the things that you decide are easier for you, or whatever the case may be, for any of the reasons why people tend to bodybuild or be a competitor without this aspect of full alignment with what they're doing. And it's hard to get there because you don't really know what you like until you start doing it. You start like playing Tetris. That's what I call it. Is I call it playing Tetris. Like when you're trying to get to know yourself and what you like, you're playing Tetris for a while. Sometimes the blocks don't
pieces of things and fitting them where they need to be. Yeah.
Yes, and it takes time and experience, but it also takes asking yourself questions, and it takes, like, if you have a coach, like your coach should be asking you questions too, like, and so that they can get an understanding of you, so that you can make this something that's a lifestyle that's prolonged for you. Because me, like, I love it so much, and I love helping people so much with it, that I couldn't imagine not doing it even when I'm not a competitive bodybuilder anymore. I don't see why I wouldn't. Like, it's that special to me because it provides, when you do it the right way, it provides so many more benefits than it does, cons. So,
Yeah. Yeah, you're able to control so much more in your life. And not that we have to have like full control over everything, but I think just being able to like have control over how we look and how we feel and like the shape of our bodies and how our bodies function. I think that's a big part of bodybuilding that, like, even though that is literally the point of bodybuilding, people kind of miss or lose sight of that in certain phases of it, like when they're
mhm.
in their off season, or they're going into a prep and they think they're losing size or losing muscle. They think they don't have control over what they're doing, when in reality that's something that they've just decided, when they really do have that control. It's just about like, what is the best way for me and my lifestyle and my schedule and my environment, what is the best way for me to do this sport so it actually adds to my life instead of take away.
Yes, exactly. Like, exactly what you said. It should add to your life. It shouldn't make you feel like things are being taken away from you. Yeah, there are going to be some things that you limit, but everything in moderation, right? So it's just one of those things that if you're going to do something that is this demanding, like, at the very least you should be liking what you're doing. At the very least you should be
Yeah.
liking where your body's going, or where your mental state is going. I had someone recently tell me, it was funny because she's a friend of mine. She had exited bodybuilding, and she was like, man, like, I don't know, like, for me it brought up a lot of wounds, and my mental health started to tank when I started getting really into it. She was like, with you, I don't see that. Like, I see that with some people, but I don't see that with you. And I was like, yeah, because I like it. Like, because
Well, I don't let
it
it control me. You're not
yeah,
letting your environment or this sport that you're doing control you or change you really in like a way you can't control.
yeah,
And that's the difference, is that like we bodybuild because we like it and we like what it
yeah,
adds to our life. We're not bodybuilding because like someone told us to, or you're not doing it just because your mom did it, because that's a hell of a lot of work to do on something just because your mom did it, right?
right. Yeah. It was interesting growing up because people would ask me, like, are you going to do that too? Like, are you going to be like your mom and, like, do, because back then, like, amateurs got a lot of benefits. We don't get as many now. Amateurs were getting deals, and like they were sponsored too. It was a whole different ball game in terms of making money back then if you were a good competitor.
Yeah.
So people like saw that as a career. Like, even if you were an amateur, you had a career in that. And so when I was in school, people would always ask me, like, "Are you going to be like your mom?" Because she was modeling and stuff. That's what the women did back then too. And I remember being like, "No." Like, have you seen them? Especially in
Yeah.
prep when she get really small. I was like, "Oh, you have no idea. Like, you have no idea. I would not do it." And it's like I got into college and I couldn't not do it. It was
Mhm.
like
Did
hard
you
for
just
me.
kind of gradually go into it, or how did you make the decision to start?
My mom always told me that if I was going to start competing, I needed to have less on my plate. So, like, having, like, I was thinking about doing it when I was in school, when I was in college. My mom was like, no, like, you need to make sure that you're done, experience college, be with your friends, because all of that is going to change your whole, when you start doing this and you start competing, your whole entire life is going to change. And I want you to experience the things that you're not going to experience again while you're young, instead of getting into competing and then you haven't had those experiences. And so I think that was sound advice. I think that I mentally wasn't even ready to start before I was like 24. So I started, I think I was like 23, 20. Yeah, I was like 23 when I started actually being serious about it, not competing, but I was serious about it. And I was in my master's program and I was living in Ohio. I was living in Athens, Ohio. So you visited the north side of Ohio. I was living in the southern side of Ohio when I started.
Okay.
And that is how I came across our coach, Mark, too. I just stumbled upon him and
Yeah.
then went from there. But yeah, I waited until I felt like it was the right time and I was kind of more so trying to get to know myself. So like it was really nice during that time because I started really, I wouldn't say cutting people off, but cutting dead ends off that didn't align with me anymore because I was stepping into a different person. And so that was really what solidified a lot of my needs and my wants within my own career and jobs and stuff like that because I started being like, okay, this is the lifestyle I'm going to live. How can I do something that allows for this to happen? And
Mhm.
so I was young enough to like start picking and choosing what was right for me. And so I'm happy my mom gave me that advice because I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it the right way in college. I was still very much into what everyone else was doing, wanting to be
You want
parts
to
of
have
things.
both, probably.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. In my first prep, I tried. I really did try to have both, and it didn't work. Like, I mean, I did well, and
How did you
I did
try to have both as an example?
I would I would like still go to parties and bring my food and shit. Um, I would stay up late and like not really want to stay up, but wanted to be with my friends. I wouldn't go off plan, like I wasn't going off plan, but I was definitely making making choices that didn't make my days consistent because I was trying to balance the two. So it made for a physique that wasn't as conditioned as I could have been. And a lot of errors were made because I was tracking macros and stuff like that because I wanted to
Yeah.
do both.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a time and a place, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that advice that your mom gave about like you're not ready, you're doing too much, you need to get less on your plate. How do you give that was good advice for you then. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had athletes come to you who are like 20, 21,
Yeah.
22, like still in college or still having a lot on their plate. How do you approach going like helping them into bodybuilding while like, giving them advice that works for them, and maybe not telling them to wait as long as you did?
Yeah. So I asked them what they value. Like, what do you value right now? Because they're coming to me because they value competing or bodybuilding. So there's one
Right.
thing that they value. But outside of that life, like what do you want to experience? Because if you want to experience going and drinking and partying and stuff all the time, this isn't the lifestyle for you. Like you need
Yeah.
to know that. Like you need to at the very least understand that. So,
Hmm.
what do you value within this experience? And then you play process of elimination from there. So, some people are going to be like, well, I stay in my dorm room all the time and I really don't talk to anyone and I can make all my food and prep my food and I really don't care what I have to do. And there
Hmm.
are some people that operate like that. And so their process is going to be a lot different. It's easy for me because I could just give them a plan. But like when it comes to somebody who's like, well, maybe I have a significant other and I still want to have date nights, or like sometimes I'm in a sorority and I like to do this with my friends once a month. Like there's a time and a place for those types of activities. And there's going to be times where you can't do things or you can't like put yourself in those situations because you could potentially fall into making mistakes that don't need to be made. And
Yeah.
so those times are going to be contest prep. So, like for college students that are still really in their, like, really involved like that, I will generally say, let's wait. And I would generally say, like, let's wait until we have a time where you have more space for that and you're not valuing these other things. Because you can still bodybuild. You can still
Yeah.
bodybuild, but it's different when you're competitively bodybuilding, or maybe you want to be at a high level. Like if you come
Hmm.
to me and you're a college student, you're like, I want to be an IFBB pro in the next 2-3 years. Well, it's like, and you're doing that,
A
all these
very
other
specific life that you're signing up
yeah,
for then.
you know what I mean? So I ask people, anybody, not just people in college or with a lot on their plate, like, what do you value in this? And then once they tell me that, then I go from there. And then we start again playing Tetris with whatever aligns with them. And there are some points where it's like, okay, you want this, you have to make this change. Like, I know you want to be able to have these two things, but they don't align. So you got to figure out what you value here. And then they go, they think about it and they go from there.
Yeah, I find like especially with younger athletes and like people who have never been in the sport, and you or me, like we have the opportunity to like help them start the best way possible and not go with someone who's going to like steer them wrong or sacrifice their health or whatever. It's like it's a responsibility and it's a cool opportunity in my mind that we have to like show people that you can't just want something and then do it. You like it doesn't go from there to there. It goes from like I want something, I need to learn the skills and learn how it actually works before I can do it. And a big part of being able to be successful on stage is learning your body more and becoming more self-aware. And I think that that's probably the biggest skill gap that I see in people that want to compete is
Yeah.
just they don't have that self-awareness with their food, their lifestyle, their sleep, like
Mm.
all of their behaviors, their values even. Like a lot of people don't even have those values you're talking about.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's important at first. So it's good to, like you're saying, like understand what you're doing because then you understand what's important. So and you have like a day where, I don't know, maybe you have to let one thing fall over another. And you know which choice to make. Like there are some times where people don't know what choices to make. And so it's important to understand what is actually important. So like if you're valuing your supplements over prepping your food, that doesn't make sense. Like you have to know which of the two is the most important for that day there if you have to pick something. Like I should be able to quiz my athletes and say, in this situation, what would you do? Like, and
Yeah.
they make the right decision by process of elimination, understanding what's most important here. Because sometimes things aren't perfect.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to understand, like, even choices, like if you get invited out, you have to lose out on sleep. And the next day you have to get up for cardio. Like, what do you do? What do you do? You probably have to say no. Like, you probably have to not do that. And you have to be okay with it.
Yeah. So how in the beginning I asked you who you are and you said the last time you were asked that you were probably a different person. So how would you say you would have answered that the last time you were asked that question?
Oh, okay. So I think
Describe who you are.
the last time I was asked that question, I think I was a couple years ago and I was still working my daytime job. I wasn't a full-time coach yet. And so I think I would have answered something within the lines of like my career and what I was doing previously. I find that I attach a lot of my identity to my career and what I work with because I don't do anything unintentionally. Everything I do, I like what I'm doing and I'm passionate about it. So it's part of my identity. So I think I would have answered that like and said, "Hey, I'm Brittney Holloman." I didn't even use justice. I'm Brittney Holloman, and like I work for student affairs and campus recreation because that's what I used to do. So I used to help college students with um, wellness and fitness and wellness programming. I oversaw personal trainers, group exercise instructors, and with fitness facilities in college college campuses, usually your fitness coordinator is helping with like equipment purchases and stuff and looking at new pieces of equipment to bring in. So like I would have answered on like within that realm that is no longer part of my life.
Okay.
So because now I'm a full-time bodybuilding coach.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like a sense of like when talking to non-bodybuilding people, and I don't know how often you run into these people, but like because your whole world out there is bodybuilding, but
Yes.
or just like people that are coaches, right? Um, how do you feel about it when you're like explaining to someone in the outside world what you do?
Sometimes it's hard for me to go into detail because it's
Hmm.
hard to understand.
Yeah.
I have to give people bits. like really like small bits of what I do so that they can have a general understanding of why it's important. Because a lot of Gen Pop people that maybe they don't know anything about this, a lot of times they're asking, why would you want to do all of that? It's like so much, it's so much to
Yeah.
them. No, it's so much to them. They're
Yeah.
like, you do that for what? Like, so it's
Or they
so,
don't even, they can't even believe that that's how you make money.
yes.
You know,
Yeah,
like they think you're a personal trainer. You explain to them, no, I do everything online, like via email or WhatsApp or whatever. And then they're like, is that your real job?
yeah.
Like,
Like,
it took my parents even a while to understand why I would quit a full-time corporate job with nice benefits and an office and a salary for coaching.
yeah. Like that was a big thing for, I think, well, not necessarily my family. My family's honestly, I don't think they're clear on what I do. They just
Yeah.
see me post a lot and I post a lot of good advice and they think that that's like, they're very proud of that. Like they're very
Yeah.
proud that I'm well spoken and I didn't crash and burn and like they're proud of the results of the choice that I made. I think the
Right.
only person who really gets what I do, and that's because she's a bodybuilder, is my mom. So
Yeah.
like at least within my world and my family, like in my family, I think it's she was like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Because really it's hard to make money doing this. You have to
Hmm.
grind every single day." I remember I was with a friend a while back. I think it was like 2019, 2020, and I was talking to him and he was like, "Every day is a grind." He's an IFBB pro and he was like, "Every day is a grind. Every single day you wake up, you got to be doing something that is a benefit to your coaching or your body, your career in bodybuilding. There is no day off with this."
Do you
And I
think you
remember,
understood what he meant at that point?
no, 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 not even kind
Did you
of,
like
not
not
even,
believe him?
even now. Sometimes I'll have a day where I felt like I could have done more, and
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, I don't get this day back. And
Yeah.
I'm not hard on myself, but I definitely have those thoughts. Whereas back then, I didn't have those thoughts. I didn't even know what my limits were yet. So I didn't know what a day of success looked like to me.
Hmm.
Um,
You're
and
just doing
I
your
didn't,
job,
yes,
like,
yeah,
right? Just checking
exactly.
off boxes and like doing what you're told pretty much.
I
Doesn't have a
mean,
hierarchy.
yeah, the amount of impactful work that you do on a regular basis doing this versus having a 9 to 5 where you don't take your work home is completely different. Like, so it's
Hmm.
not just I'm going to wake up and grind, it's that I'm going to wake up and be impactful. Like, I'm going to wake up and make sure I help someone today. I'm going to
Yeah.
wake up and make
Regardless of
sure
how
that,
I feel
yes,
emotionally.
yes. Like, I remember being at my day job, and sometimes there were some days I really didn't get that much done, but I get paid anyway. Like I get my
Yeah.
salary anyway, but this is so much more pressure because you literally work every hour for every dollar that you get.
Hmm.
So, and that's a lot of
Well,
people don't understand what that feels like.
no, because it's like you don't really think about the fact that like the bulk of our work is really just it's impact, and how do we impact? We have to relate on a personal level to people, and there's differing levels of that personal value for each coach. Like every coach has a different type of way they connect and relate to athletes, but no matter what, you're relating to athletes because you're talking about their health and their mental health and their physical, mental. You're building discipline within them because sometimes they
Mhm.
need that help, and that is a lot of work that you have to be like really on point for. You can't just be like, I'm not gonna do that one today. Like
Yeah, no,
this check in, nah, I'm good.
like there is an athlete today where I was helping her with her check-in or I was doing her check-in and then I didn't write a note down that I needed for the next thing I wanted to do with her. And I was like, fuck, I didn't write it down. And I had to ask her, like, I had to go back and listen to my voice memos and remember what I gave her. Because if I don't, then my next choice isn't going to assist her. And we had to
Hmm.
like actually talk about like what I didn't write down. And there are a lot of times where you can, I mean, mistakes are made here and there, but like there are a lot of times in other job formats where you can miss something here and there, and it's not going to be a big deal. Like, but it is a big deal when you have high pressure situations as a coach,
Yeah.
and you can't you can't make a mistake here. Like there's certain areas where you can't make a mistake like that.
Yeah. The
And
ramifications are someone's health, someone's placement sometimes that like that's a big deal. If like a
yeah,
mistake you make is the difference between someone, you know, peaking correctly or not, or, you know, getting their health back online versus not, then like that's a big deal to
yeah.
them and to you.
Like imagine if you're doing your taxes and like the IRS really decided they wanted to look at everything. Like instead
Mhm.
of just you kind of figured it out. Like there's some people that just kind of send what is it called, their taxes or whatever, and they just kind of
I
mull
don't
over it.
know. TurboTax.
Imagine
Yeah.
there's some people that do that. But
Yeah.
imagine if the IRS was like, today I'm gonna go through all your shit. Like, and you got dinged for every single mistake that you made or whoever's doing your taxes made. Like it's kind of similar. It's like being held accountable all the time. And
Mhm.
so that's what makes pressure is being held accountable. So when you're coaching and you're a good coach, you're constantly being held accountable by the choices you make because your your athletes or your clients' health is on the line, or their show is on the line, or their win is on the line, or their loss is on the line, or whatever. And then and if you care like that, it is high pressure if you care.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's a big reason why coaching is a lot harder than people think it is. And,
mhm.
you know, especially coaching at a high level or just coaching full time, whether it's a high level or not. Like a lot of people look at coaching and they say like, that looks great. That looks easy. Like I just get to give people their macros and tell them to do this and like that's my job. Sign me up. But it's not
Yeah,
like that, like because you're right, like there is that constant accountability where, you know, say you get a client cancel because they realize they can get better service from another coach because you look at this as something that's supposed to be easy, and the other coach they went to look at this as something much more than that. That's
yeah,
accountability.
yeah. You can tell the difference between a career coach and just somebody who does this for a revenue stream or does it for cloud or whatever. You can tell the difference. You can tell the difference between somebody that knows what they're doing and understands their athlete versus someone that doesn't. Like I had an athlete today where she had told me that she wanted to go get a breast reduction and all that, and she was going to have to take some time off. And she was like, I hope you're okay with this. And I said, oh, of course I'm okay with this. Of course, like I want you to feel at home with your body. My
Yeah.
concern for you, because of your past, is that when you have to take long stints off of training, it really messes with your mental health. And she was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, you really know me. Like, I don't think I've ever had a
Yeah.
coach talk to me like that. Like, and I was like, yeah, like because that's
It's
my
my
job.
job.
I
Yeah.
get to know you. So like, just little stuff like that, like lets me know I'm in the right place. Um,
Mhm.
lets me know I'm doing what I need to do to help the people I want to help. So
Have you ever had doubts about if you are in the right place or if you are on the right track with your life and where you want it to go? Or your
I
capability to get there?
I've always shifted if I felt like I wasn't in the right place. So like my last career, or I guess my last career, I guess you could call it that. When I started to feel like I was living two different lives, it became really stressful to try to keep up with those two realities. And
Yeah.
so, and one body can't do that, at least not in this physical space. So when you're trying to keep up with two different realities, it can feel really stressful. And so there comes a point where you have to make a decision. And so I've always been okay with letting go. I've always been okay with meeting myself where I'm at and merging into alignment, even if I had to let something go, even if it was what I thought was it. Like I thought that I did think that that career in that space was it. I got my degree in that. Like I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think that that was it for me. But it just so happened that like things unfolded with coaching, and I realized, oh, I am good at this. Oh, I have the qualities of somebody that could take other people far. And so I think that, to answer your question, have I had doubts? I wouldn't say doubts, but I've had pivotal moments where I was like, oh, it's time to shift. It's time to make a
Tell me
change.
about a pivotal moment that's happened like recently for you
Hmm. Recently,
in the last year.
in the last year, I felt pretty aligned in the last year. I felt pretty much like my decisions made sense. I've had dips in passion and excitement for sure. But that comes with the territory of anything that you're doing. I think that when it comes to coaching, I've never really felt like it wasn't for me. I think that I've always wanted that for myself even before I started doing it. So yeah, that's difficult to think about because I feel like I've been in automatic movement for like the past couple of years since I got on or since I moved to Avon Lake for sure.
Yeah. What made you really know that you needed to move to Avon Lake? Because you were already coaching full time at that point,
Yeah.
or that was like
No,
around that transition, right?
no, I quit my job. Like I
Yeah.
quit my job and I packed everything up in my car and I drove here and or not here but in to Avon Lake, and that was like I told you I felt like I was living a dual reality. So I was living in two different spaces in my head, and it was getting stressful on my body. My body started reacting. Like my body, my resting heart rate was crazy all the time. Um, I had like a lot of skin issues and histamine issues start to pop up. I had a lot of allergy issues that started to pop up, and my asthma. I didn't have asthma, but I started developing asthma, like asthmatic symptoms. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
moved, I my body started healing, and it started performing the way that I needed it to perform to be good at this and to be good at bodybuilding. So I think that I noticed the stress in my body before, and the body doesn't lie. But before I accepted that there needed to be a change. So, like in terms of alignment, I think that people need to think about what their body is doing to them, because their body's not going to lie. It's going to tell them exactly what they need to know, whether or not they want to at that moment accept it or not, or if they feel ready or not to make the right moves for themselves. But definitely like pay attention to your body because it's going to tell you way before you're going to be able to accept it mentally.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why people are like have such slow progress, whether they're on their own or with a coach who isn't as like isn't as intuitive, right? Is people just they choose not to listen to their body. They ignore those signs and they say things like, "Oh well, I've always been like this. I've always had gut issues. I've always had digestion. I've always had bloating, or
Woo!
I've always had eczema." Like it's
Yeah.
normal.
Yes. Oh, you were
Well,
preaching. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Because like that's really it. Like you think these things are little, but they're telling you something that you're not listening to. And so it's about figuring out what that thing is that you're not doing for yourself. Maybe you're not putting yourself first. In a maybe you're in a shitty relationship. You don't want to admit it. Maybe the path that you're taking, you're questioning yourself. You have doubts about yourself.
yeah.
Um, Actually, I can answer your question. So recently, I just I just switched to from figure to wellness. Okay, so now
Perfect.
I'm training
Yeah.
as a wellness competitor. And at first, I what I noticed was I wasn't showing up to my upper body sessions as I needed to, like as I needed to be a professional figure competitor. And that's a big red flag for me because that wasn't something that was normal. And so then I started like really thinking about how I was showing up specifically on that training or during that training session and on those days. that included with my food and stuff like that, and how I was showing up to sessions or days that I had sessions that I actually wanted to see some the progression that I was looking for within that training session. Because what I felt like was, okay, when I'm training this area, I actually don't want this to happen, so I'm not mentally here. Like I'm not mentally doing what I need to do. So in that, I'm kind of wasting my own time. And
Yeah.
so
Just
it
going
was
through the
hard.
motion.
Right. It was hard because I've been training for figure for like 5 years. And I think in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that long, but you do become attached to, your persona within it. Like I told you, I embody. So I'm embodying things. I'm not just doing them. And so I had this switch or this shift in myself where I started thinking, I would like to have, like, I still want to bodybuild. Like that is always going to be part of my life. But I think I might need to take a shift in the way I'm doing this and put what I would like to look like first rather than what I am just good at. Because I am good at this. And that was one of the reasons why I was doing it. Because I was like, I have the perfect shape for figure. That's why I should do it. And it became less about doing, like, going the route that I thought made the most sense, and going the route instead that made me happy and created a body that I wanted to see within myself on me. And so when I first switched to wellness, because I had been doing that, figure for so long, I really didn't take myself seriously in it, because I want to do things at such a high level. And I was almost at that point in figure. All I needed to do is put on size, and I would be fine. Like, and then I decided to go learn something else that was completely out of the scope of what I ever thought I would ever do. I never thought I would do that. And so I became frustrated with myself, and I had to heal through the decision. I had to heal through the fact that me and Rachel won't connect on that figure level anymore. I have to heal through the fact that me and my mom won't connect through that anymore. And so I had to let go of the things that I loved in terms of connection from others and think about myself. And that was fucking hard. Like, and it still is. I'm just now, and it's been like 4 months, I think I've been training for wellness. And I just now am stopping looking through my old figure photos and shit. And I love bodybuilding so much that I see the beauty in all divisions. It just really was dependent on what I wanted to see for myself. And so I definitely had doubts at first, but then as I continued to do the tasks every day that would get me to a point where I was proud of the physique I was creating, it started happening. And now I'm like, oh shit, like you actually look like you're training for wellness. But it took a lot of pushing through discomfort and believing that I could, instead of being really pessimistic on like, damn, I really should I have made this decision? Yada. And it brought a new piece of me out where I was able to relate to others who might be struggling with the same thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, like I was definitely very proud of being a figure competitor, and now I'm becoming proud of being a wellness competitor. So it's cool to see that shift happen.
Good. Yeah. It is hard when it's almost like a mourning, like you're mourning your past self a little bit. And I think it's hard too, and like we see people on social media, right? And we internalize some of the things that we see, even if we're not someone who goes out of our way to compare ourselves to others. Like I don't think that
Mhm.
you do that really, but there's definitely a lot of people out there that switch divisions, just kind of like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just gonna do this.
No big
And
deal.
you can kind of see it from the outside and know that like, well, she's just giving up on that. Like she's just giving up on figure because she couldn't hack it, or
No.
that's why she's doing wellness. And it's like
Yeah.
that's not true. And I think you and I talked about that too. It's like there's like wellness is not easier than figure. You
Mhm.
could even say like it's just a different division. Just like figure is not necessarily easier than women's physique. They're completely
Right.
different, and all of them require extremes. And even looking at bikini is hard in its own right because like there's a certain point where you're going to grow and need to stay there, And that takes a lot of fucking focus and discipline to stay a certain size when you love training.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's just people that kind of do it to do it because maybe someone told them they should, and they don't have enough like of their own self-awareness and like self-acceptance and self-belief that they can either like stay in the thing that they love, or they can go to the thing that they love and they really see as right for them.
Yeah. Yeah, we did have that conversation. And I remember telling you, I felt like at first I was like, man, I feel like I'm bitching out. Like in a way, I feel like I'm bitching out of like the division that I was doing. And then you were like, well, wellness ain't for no bitch. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, because it's like it's not easier. It's a whole different ball game in terms of training and like what you have to do. If anything, I feel like I have to be really like more so connected with my training progression specifically because I'm only
Mm-hmm.
training my lower half. So like
Yeah.
I have to be very detailed about which areas I'm engaging. Like I can't, it's just not just we walk in and we have a quad and delt day, we hit quads. It's like what part of the quad? Like, you know what I mean? It's like it's that detailed with this type of training. And I love that you
Especially
said
because
like
you're training lower body so many times per week, and I think that's a
yeah,
big part of it, like to help people
recovery.
understand that, like what part of the quad. It's like it's because you're training legs every time you're training almost, and so that's why it has to be so much more specific than say like a figure program that is going to be more balanced than a bikini or a wellness program.
Yeah. And I think too, like to your point about what you said, what did you say? You said like I think people maybe thought you were just giving up because I couldn't get
Mm-hmm.
there, and that's not the truth. I knew that if I kept doing figure, I'm going to be an IFBB pro in the next 2 to 3 years. I knew that, and it was like I had to let that go. I had to let that go. That knowing that I could do that very soon, and it would be in some ways because I had the shape for it, and all I needed was to really put on size and make sure that my presentation was there. I knew and I believed that I could do that. So it was going to happen. And so I had this phase of mourning that because I knew it could have happened very soon and I was very close. And just because of the person I am, not because I have a crazy physique, but that's just the person I am. And so I had to embody that same person or learn how to embody that same person in a division that I was inexperienced in or am inexperienced in. So
Yeah.
now I feel like at first I was like, I'm taking steps back. And I had to realize, no, I'm just making a lateral move and it might
Mm-hmm.
take a little bit more time because I do have a lot to grow and I do have a lot to learn, but that's okay. It doesn't take away from the fact that I'm a competitor. It doesn't take away from the fact that I love bodybuilding. It doesn't take away from the fact that I'm a coach and I'm a good coach. And I think I had to accept those things too because I started to coincide the change with lack of because I'm not as experienced and I had to
Yeah.
recognize like that's not the case. You were just close in figure and that's fine. um and a lot of people would have just pushed through and
Mm-hmm.
just done it until they got their pro card and then wasn't interested in competing at that level anymore,
Yeah.
and that's not
And
what I
I
wanted for
honestly
myself.
see that. I see that a lot.
Yeah.
Like I've been competing since 2015, so like
Mm.
almost 10 years, and there's so many people I've watched take that route. They're going the
Yep.
path of least resistance, of the least amount of, relationship to self and like what they truly love and what they truly want for themselves, because they're just so fixated on the thing they wanted 3 years ago or 5 years ago, or the thing
Mhm.
that someone says they can do, like getting the pro card. And so
Yeah.
they're so fixated on that they just like they throw everything at that, and everything else just kind of goes to the wayside. And then they get there, guess what? It's not as good as you thought it would be. It's not as cool because at the end of the day, it's just a sport that you pay to do. Like
Yes.
the heavens don't rain down when you get the pro card. You still have to work. It's an everyday grind, whether you're an amateur or a pro or a coach or not a coach. No matter what, it's still going to be hard. And even if you had gone the route of figure, you'd continue to need to change. and
Yeah,
continue to the need to evolve. And so I think that's a great point that you bring up, is like you're going to have to change anyway, so you might as well change in the direction that you want to change.
exactly. Like if I'm gonna, like I said, I like to do things, I like to embody. Like I want to embody this. I don't just want to say I do this. And I felt like that move was so that I could continue to evolve and embody exactly what I'm doing. So that when I become a pro, then I will still want to compete. And it won't
Mm-hmm.
just be about gaining that pro card and then saying, oh, okay, I'm an IFBB pro, I'm good. Like I'm not
Yeah.
interested in continuing that. Because then that what does that do? That stops my evolution. That stops
Mm-hmm.
the person that I'm becoming. And so I wasn't okay with that. I started to not like I was okay with that for a few years, but then I got to a point where I was like, I'm not okay with this because I know myself way better than that. And
Yeah.
that was really what sparked the decision and pushed me into saying something because I was like, I want to keep going. Like I want to. I even told Mark too. I was like, yo, with wellness, because it was funny because a few weeks prior I had told him there was some certain drug that I didn't want to like dip into with figure. I was like, I don't know if I really want to do that again because I was doing some stuff. And I told him I was like, for wellness, I don't care. Do whatever. And he was like, what? He was like, really? And I was like, I don't give a fuck. I was like, I don't care. But that's what I'm saying is that like
Mm-hmm.
there's no negotiation. It's like, I'm going to do this and I want to do it to the level that the highest level I can. And so now I have less limits. I have less, like, I have just less caps on what I feel like I want for myself within that. And that's what I want. I think that if you're going to grow in something, you should want to continue to grow and not want to stop because you're afraid of what you might become. Like
Mm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
totally. Well, it's like that statement of like, hey, while we're working on figure, I don't want to touch these drugs.
mhm,
That's my value. But really, it's not about the value about the drug. It's about the fact that like that's yourself, maybe subconsciously saying that like, if I have to do these things, then I might as well just not do this. So it's kind of like
yes.
self sabotaging your journey in that figure division, and then
Yeah,
like the shift you feel being able to say like, oh yeah, I'm okay with doing those if it's wellness. Well, that means that you really love and you're really passionate about doing that, and like
yes.
that's why it's the right thing for you.
Exactly. It's a subconscious thing, and people don't realize what their subconscious does when you are not in alignment and the limits you give yourself, the self-limiting
Mm-hmm.
beliefs you have. And I was like, I do not want that for myself at all. I want to be like, I want to be so good to myself that there's nothing that makes me feel fear and afraid that I can't get there. Um, and it wasn't even like, oh, I know I'm going to need these so that I get there because I would have needed them anyway. But it was the
Yeah.
willingness to go far. Like you don't want to be with someone and you're like, I'm cool being your girlfriend, but I don't want to be your wife. Like, you know what I mean? It's,
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like
Totally.
I don't really want to commit to you. Like it's knowing that that relationship is going to grow that makes you excited for the next thing. Like makes you excited to keep going, makes you excited to keep like
And
loving
exciting
each
to try new things and like see
other.
yourself change through something. I think if you
Yes. So
you might have been afraid of seeing yourself change while pursuing figure and seeing yourself change into the best figure competitor you could be, because maybe that's not what you really wanted. Obviously it wasn't.
yeah. And it was hard too because I had spent so long not being honest with myself that I was like, you know, and I'm that type of person. I'm that person that's always, and if you listen to the competitive edge, I'm always talking about honesty, be honest, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, was I really living that? And I had this whole moment where I was like, fuck, like
God.
all of that shit that I said, like it was I actually not doing that, and it started to, so it really made me take a look at myself and be honest with myself. And so that was difficult because I had to hold myself accountable for that. I was like, fuck. But now I know what it is and what the feelings, the body feelings that I wasn't recognizing. Now I know what they are. So if they ever happen again, I know what decision to make from there. But I
Yeah.
think I pushed down a lot of my emotions, and I pushed down a lot of what I thought I did want or I didn't want.
Yeah.
So that was interesting for me too, because I'm that type of person that'll be like, yeah, I know I said that, my bad. Like, and so because
Well,
I'm like that, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, do you think a part of you was saying that and being so hard on that point because you knew that you needed to hear that too?
Yes. So like I've said this on my Instagram a couple times, but when I write stuff or when I write captions or when I talk about things, a lot of times I'm teaching myself. Like if
Mhm.
I'm talking about alignment right now, I'm actually teaching myself this. I'm
Yeah.
talking to you all. I'm talking to you, Rachel, but I'm really telling myself this and I'm reinforcing what I'm doing right now. And
Yeah,
so
you're holding
anytime,
yourself accountable.
exactly. And so when somebody's talking about something or they're trying to teach you, a lot of times they don't know that they're teaching themselves. And so yeah, definitely like I I level with that a lot.
What do you think is the biggest reason why people cannot listen to their self-conscious thought like that?
Because they're afraid of what they might lose. They're attached to what they have and the things they've already done, and hoping that continues to push them into a higher level, with whatever they're doing. And so they're afraid to lose what they already have. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to making the right moves for yourself, even if it's difficult, you have to be okay with the fact that there's going to be something that will change, and you have to be okay with that death within yourself, or whatever deaths need to happen, so that you can come out and have exactly what you desire or exactly what you see for yourself. So I think
Yeah.
that people have a hard time listening to themselves. Maybe they, hi mom, maybe they don't have, maybe they don't have the skills to identify what they're feeling. Maybe they don't know, they really don't know how to identify. But I think mostly the main reason is because they're afraid to lose something. I know it was for me, I was afraid to not be able to say, oh, I am a figure competitor. I am, that was just, ugh. Even on my wolf pack right now, it still says figure on it. I'm still working on it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I think people get afraid of that.
Yeah. They get afraid of like losing a part of their identity, even though they
Mm,
do want to be in a new identity. They're just like, they're comfortable. And like we
yeah.
get so comfortable with something that we've done for so long and maybe gotten a little good at. And then,
Mhm.
or we also get comfortable with the approval of others. And I know
Yeah.
that that used to be a big thing for me, is just the approval of others and people pleasing. And I think the biggest reason I've found so much more like alignment in my life in the last 2 to 3 years has been because I've dropped that concern of what other people think of me and what other people like might be thinking. Because at the end of the day, like when we are fearful of people's judgment, we're not fearful of the actual judgment. We're fearful of what we think the judgment is, or we're
Hmm.
fearful of what maybe what someone says, like a comment like you're not wellness, or for me, like as a figure pro, you're never gonna do well at a pro show, you're never gonna do this, like, yeah, I've seen those comments and I've seen those things and I've gotten that feedback and it sucks, but I don't have to believe it, just like I don't have to believe my own thoughts when my thoughts are maybe self deprecating or just like self limiting. You
Hmm.
don't have to believe anything you hear, really. You have to think
Yeah.
about, what is my truth? What am I living in? What do I want? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what other people want or think of you. Even the people
Yes.
that are closest to you, your loved ones, like they
Hmm.
should want to support everything that you want for yourself as long as it's not hurting anybody.
Yes. It has more to do with how you feel about you than it does. anybody else. And you're in charge of your own reality. So you live in your brain, right? Your brain is your brain, and you do have the power to choose what you let in and what you don't. And I think that sometimes people let other people get in, like they think that it's other people getting in their way, but it's really themselves getting in their way because they're
Mhm.
choosing to really emphasize whatever negativity is going on instead
Yeah.
of bypassing it and saying, well, it doesn't really matter what they think because they're not living where
They're
I'm
not
at.
me.
They're not in my
Yeah.
head. They're not me. Exactly. Your brain is a whole dimension. Like you have a whole dimension over there that I don't have access to right now.
Yeah.
And that's important for people to recognize is that nobody else is in charge of your dimension. Only you are.
Yeah.
So for sure.
Yeah, I think that's like one of my favorite lessons to see someone learning for themselves and see their life change because of when they stop letting that outside influence into their dimension. They realize like, oh, they're just saying that because they're projecting onto me. Like they're projecting their fears or their insecurities. Like someone judging you for being in a prep when they're not a bodybuilder but you are, and you're really excited and proud of what you're doing. Well, why does something they say about your meal dictate how you feel about what you're doing when a minute ago you loved it?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that like when you realize how small like other people want or their opinions about you are in relation to what you're doing and how you're living, it starts to get easier for you to not negotiate with yourself based on that.
Yeah. It's like
Hmm.
any other skill. You start to get better and better at it the more you practice it. The more you
I
say like thanks but no thanks to that feedback, the better you are at not taking it personal.
Yeah, you'll notice that a lot of like fully embodied people, magnetic people that you find in your life, and like those of you that are listening, you might have some people that come to mind when I say the word magnetic. Those people have practiced over and over every single day choosing themselves. And so that's why it feels like, wow, I just love talking to them. I love when they come around. They teach me so much because they're practicing something that you maybe haven't tapped into yet. And so it's important to recognize when that's happening and why they're magnetic to you. Because if they're magnetic to you, they're probably doing something that you need to learn for yourself.
How do you practice that for yourself? Like in on a more just like personal level, like your version of self-love and practicing like choosing yourself.
Ooh, I think making sure that not that I'm comfortable, but I'm proud of every decision I make during the day. So, for example, today I walked 30 minutes to a gym so that I could get my 20 minutes of cardio done because that's on my plan. And a lot of people would think, why are you out in California with your family right now? And you walked 30 minutes to go do your 25 minutes cardio? Yeah, because that's on my plan. Because if I don't, I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of not doing what's on my plan. I don't care if it seems crazy. Um, I don't need to tell everyone that I did that, right? Like it's just for me. So I walked 30 minutes to a gym. I did 25 minutes of cardio and I walked 30 minutes back. I spent more time getting to the gym than I than I did doing the cardio. And when I
Yeah.
was leaving, I was like, I'm so proud I did that. I'm so happy I did that. Because when I check in, not for Mark, but for me, I can say I did that and I got that done this week. And I know a lot of people would have either not done it or thought that that's ridiculous. Like I'm not walking that far. And
Mm-hmm.
I was proud of myself for that. And I don't care if somebody thinks I'm crazy for that. If I ever, who, whoever is listening.
Yeah. Yeah, because any judgment that someone has about something like that, it's like that's because of what the dimension they're in. Going back to that, is like if they think that's overly restrictive or
Mhm.
obsessive or crazy or whatever, or like, you know, too much, then that's because it might be too much for them at that point in their lives. And
Yeah,
that
and
means that they might not be ready for the types of goals that you have. And that's okay too.
right. I mean, even I also thought about this while I was walking too. I was like, damn, I'm in an off season and I'm making this like I'm making this a thing that I'm doing. A lot of people in their off season probably would let that slide. It's cardio in the off season. Like it's not going to kill you to not do it, but I'm not proud of not doing it. So I'm going to go do it so that I'm proud of myself at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a less of a self concept of myself by not doing it. Like that wouldn't be a problem, but I just know that I wouldn't be happy with that. And so I think that during the day, like as I make decisions, as I work, like even if I try to negotiate whether or not I want to send a voice memo to my athlete or a text, am I going to be proud of just texting them? No, I want them to have some sort of personal, personal connection with me during their check in. So I'm going to send that voice memo so that I have that with them, so that the quality of coaching that I have is there. So every decision that I make, I've got to be proud of it.
I think the decisions, like that pride that you have over like every decision, that's something that it makes you better at making better decisions too. And so for someone who's listening who like, say has trouble staying on their plan, well, you have trouble staying on your plan because you're probably not enjoying your plan. So you're not enjoying it because it's not your, somehow in your mind, it's not aligned with you and your life and your values, like we talked about before. So, like, if you shift away from like, I have to hit my plan to make my coach proud, or I have to make, hit my plan to so I can get on stage, making the shift from that towards more of just like a prideful moment and or a gratitude type of moment,
Yes.
like I'm really grateful I even have the ability to do this, or I'm really
Mhm.
proud that I got that done and I finished it and I can say that I did it now. Like that compounds over time. Every like little win that we have compounds, and it gets us better and more and closer to bigger wins down the line.
Yeah, gratitude is a big thing too. I think being able to bring yourself into spaces that like raise your vibration, which most of the time you're going to feel that rise when you're grateful, when you're proud, when you're excited, when you're feeling playful or creative. Those are all areas that you can start to see and feel yourself becoming or become like a higher or greater version of yourself. And so a lot of times we have so much energy during those times. Like you don't have a lack of energy. I didn't have lack of energy when I was walking for an hour. Like I was like, I'm gonna go get my I'm gonna go get my stuff done because it makes that makes me proud. And so knowing the journey I had to make to get that done wasn't the problem. It was never none of it was a problem. And I think that when you're not being grateful for what you're doing, or you're not feeling creative in what you're doing, or you're not proud, you're going to run out of energy really quick. And so you'll notice you're not choosing yourself when you're not in that space, when you're drained all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are there any ways right now that you can identify that you're not choosing yourself?
That's a good question.
If you're being really honest with yourself?
Oh, snap.
Or are you perfect?
Where am I not? I'm perfect. Where am I not choosing myself? That's really good because I feel like I'm at this point where I really am choosing myself. And so it's difficult to answer that question, because if you would have asked me this like 2 weeks ago, I would have said, I think that I'm doing a little bit too much for others and not thinking about myself enough. I think I'm putting energy into projects that aren't for me and doing that for the sake of other people. But I think now, like since then, I've let certain things go and I'm now asking for help instead of doing everything myself. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think I'm working through a lot. I think if I would say anything that I could improve on, I think it would be asking others for assistance or asking for advice or connecting with others and not thinking that I have to do everything on my own. I would say I
Yeah.
that's a big thing for me is asking for help.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in collaboration. And I think I've also struggled with that a lot, is asking for help. Even when I knew logically, or I know logically that I do need help, or help would really help.
Oh,
And
really?
it's like something something that I've realized more recently is that, like, even especially if you're asking someone you really love or really trust, someone that's very close to you, if you're asking them for help, they not only is it going to help you logically, but it's going to make them feel really good too. And it's going to
Mhm.
make them feel closer to you and more like they can help, because that's something that a lot of people really want. Like you and
Yeah.
we love helping people, right? But
Mhm.
I try to think about that feeling for others, that they love me, they know me, and they want me to succeed. Like, they want to help and know that they're a part of my journey as well.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I've tried to, that's been like my personal way of asking for help more, is like knowing that me asking for help also helps others.
Yes. Yeah. It helps with the that connection piece, making,
Yeah.
you're making yourself available. When you ask for help, you're making yourself available, and
Hmm.
you're becoming inviting. And I think that for a long time I struggled with seeming inviting, not that I need to seem anyway, but like that that pushed others away into thinking that I'm a helpful person for them. So they were less, like, my athletes were a year ago less likely to ask me for changes than they are now, because I've stepped into a person that seems a lot more available than what she was a
Yeah.
year ago.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy. That makes me happy that they want to, they feel like they can communicate with me, instead of being like, oh, you can't ask her that. She's not going to do anything. Like, I think that came with being like, I honestly think it came with being close to Mark, to be honest with you, in some ways, because
Yeah.
he has very like masculine, like,
Yeah.
he's a certain type of coach. And I think me being close with him created that energy, or at least
Hmm.
perception. And then as I changed and shifted and broke away from that a little bit, my athletes now are a lot more comfortable communicating, which I'm very
Yeah.
proud of, because it was difficult for them to see that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that too, even I don't know, but I can imagine the pendulum swing has like come the other way a little bit too, for like on Mark's side,
Uh-huh.
because I've worked with him since, or like very end of 2021, and I saw him as much more that way then, and like for the first year that I was working with him, than I do now, in terms of that, like, ultra strict, ultra hard, like, it's just like, just do it, don't he's never been like, don't ask questions, like, he's a
Yeah.
good person, but you know what I mean, like, he, I think he has softened up in ways that have helped him improve, and I think that's probably been in large part due to just like having people like you around that can show him that side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like, at first when I started menteeing under
That was my dog, the little like door stopper thing.
that's funny. I think at first, when I first started menteeing under him, I unintentionally took on that
Mhm.
energetic space. And then
Mhm.
as I started becoming more solid within myself, I realized and recognized what I wanted and what I needed for myself and how I treated myself. And then it just kind of bled into everything else. And so I think
Yeah.
that's one of the best things about choosing yourself, is getting to know yourself and understanding, like, what type of person do you want to be? Like, what do you want to be remembered for? And then going from there, and working your way back from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot about that when I'm choosing myself or making decisions in my life, especially big ones, is like, do I sometimes I think about like people I really respect, and people that like I think about Mark, like, what would Mark do? Or what would he think of me? Or like, what would he, not just like what does he think, but more or less like, this is someone I respect, would they respect that decision too? not
Yeah.
necessarily would they make that decision too, because we're different people, but like would they respect that decision? So I think about that, and also just like what kind of impact do I want to make? How do I want to, like, is this going to change someone's life for the better, or is it even necessary to do it all?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you can hear that cat, but he's really going.
That's okay. Austin's in the background making cold calls. So,
It's
last question. How has your own self love and like choosing yourself, this like journey of doing this, how has that allowed you to have more compassion for others? Because a lot of people look at certain self love choices or choosing yourself as selfish,
fine.
and it can be hard to like create a like actual divide of that, like of what is selfishness versus self-love or choosing yourself.
Yeah. I think that I'll use the wellness thing for example.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be an example for people in my life, whether that be athletes or family or whatever, to feel empowered to choose the path that like exactly what they wanted to see from themselves, like
Yeah.
and also help them to keep going, because when you keep choosing yourself and you're working in alignment, this is how you keep going. This is how you don't get to a point where you're stopped. Like, have you ever been to the end of a freeway and it just stops?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not impressive. Like, you can't keep going, you can't go on your path anymore because the fucking freeway stopped, and I didn't want to be a freeway that stopped. And like at first, before this decision was made, I actually, myself and Mark were talking about it, and I told him, I was like, man, I think I'm just going to take a break from coaching. I think I need to figure out myself. And right now, I'm not in it like that. And he was like, but you are. So it's
Yeah.
like, let's talk through what you actually want. And he was the one that suggested, well, if you still want to bodybuild, why don't you just go into the wellness division? And I was like, I didn't even see that option for myself. Like, because
Yeah.
I didn't even, I was like, oh, okay. Because at first, what was I going to do? I was just going to stop. I was just going to stop because I was like, you know what? I don't really think this is working for me. And so
Yeah.
I want people to feel empowered to make a shift so that they can keep going and keep developing in whatever way that they think suits them. And
Yeah.
so I think that when you're choosing yourself, you're always doing something to continue your development and remain grateful, because where I was not in gratitude. I was not
Mm-hmm.
being grateful for what I was doing, and
You're
I
almost in
didn't like.
servitude. Yeah.
Yes, I was self-sacrificing because I was like, well, Mark told me I'm good for this division, so I'm going to keep doing it. My mom did it. I have all my friends who are figure competitors. Like, this is it, this is my whole world.
Yeah.
But it still is my whole world. It's just in a different way. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had to
Well,
come to
it's in a
terms with
broader way now,
yeah.
because you have the experience of all these divisions now, and you're also just like, you chose yourself in a way that like you didn't expect, and so now you're now going to be a lot better at helping others do the same thing and empowering
Exactly.
others to do the same thing.
Yeah, so if somebody is also contemplating, I know how to get them to play Tetris. So
Mm-hmm.
I know how to get them. Okay, I know what questions to ask, so that we can figure out together what the path is for them. And that makes me so much happier than continuing to push with somebody that, like, if it's an athlete, for example, to continue to push into something that they really are questioning and they can't do it 100% because they're not embodying their passion with it. um,
Yeah.
I want people to feel real love. I want people to feel passionate about something. Like, I've sometimes I ask people, you know, have you ever felt passion? And sometimes people say, I don't think so. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I want people to get to a point where they experience that, because being ambitious is not just making money. Being ambitious is chasing experiences and learning and loving and being passionate. And so sometimes we don't know what the right questions are to get us to that point. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's one of the highest places you can be is to be living in love and passion. So,
Yeah. Because living in love and passion for yourself is like also living in it for others as well, because if you're doing that, that's when you get the best
Mhm.
connection with others, because if you can really love yourself, that's when you're going to be able to receive love from other people, whether it's like, you know, a deeper relationship with your parents, or a family member, or a friend, or, you know, a partner, or a significant
Mhm.
other in any way. It's like, if you're not in love with yourself, if you're not able to choose yourself and like feel safe in choosing yourself, then there's something wrong with the environment, whether it's the environment here or your external environment, because that means
Exactly.
like other people are affecting your ability to choose yourself, and you should never have
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. Exactly. We were in
Well, thank
church for
you
a
so
whole
much.
hour.
I know. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed this and you start choosing yourself. But thank you so much for coming on. I love you, and I'm just so happy to see your face and
Love
happy
you
to
too.
see you choosing yourself.
Thank you.
So I'll have all of Brittney's information in the show notes and all the things. So every Monday, thank you for listening. I'll see you guys later.